Okay, we're going to do a little bit more maths now, but we're going to jumble things up, as they say. So in Python, there is a function called Randint. How do I spell it right? Randint. And what Randint does is it returns a random integer for us. And the program uses various techniques to produce random numbers. Out of interest, they're not truly random, they're what are called pseudo-random, but go read about that some other time. And what you can do is you can specify a couple of arguments in there, which is the lowest value and the highest value. So this function here, when we call it, will generate a random integer between 1 and 10. And what I want to do is I want to assign that to a variable called num1. I can't do that because I can't have spaces. So we can do that, and we'll just print it to see what happens. Print num1. Okay, so pretty straightforward program so far. I've already saved this as maths py, so I'll be able to just say run module and save and see what happens. And I get this error, Randint is not defined. Now that's a bit of a pain because I know Randint is actually a Python function. The thing is, it's not actually built into Python as standard. It's available in the libraries that come when you download Python, but it's not instantly available within the Python interpreter. If it was, then loads of other functions would be available all the time, and Python would be cluttered up with all the possible functions that you could ever have. And you don't need them all of the time. So what Python gets you to do for the sake of making life easier is it gets you to import the ones that you want. Now I want to import this function Randint. So to do that, what I do is I know which module it's in. It's in a module called random, or a library called random. So I say from random, that's where the library is, import Randint, and hit return. Now it might seem like, gosh, I'll never remember that. Well, to be honest, the functions that you use frequently, you just remember where the libraries are. If you don't remember, then you just Google Randint and it'll tell you what library it's in anyway. What does this line here imply? Well, it tells me that there's something called random, which is actually a whole module, which is a library of functions, and I'm only importing one of them, one called Randin. So in fact, there are a lot of other functions in there that I could have imported, but I just want to import this one. So let's run the program and see if that solves my problem. Oh, a bit more maths, and it's printed 8. So was 8 really random, or was it always going to be 8? This is where I run it again. Oh, it was 7 that time. Thank goodness for that. So it looks like this function here does produce random numbers, which is quite good. So what I want to do is I want a pair of random numbers. So I'm going to just copy that line, and I'm going to get a pair of random numbers. So I've now got num1 and num2. Now obviously these are returned as integers, so I'm not going to do that typecasting like I had before. And really what I want to do is ask the question. So I need to ask the question, what is, as a maths question, num1, what we're going to do. Do you want to do addition, or should we do subtraction or multiplication? Well, everybody's always doing multiplication tables, so we'll stick with those. Num2, and it's a question, I suppose. So I need to put a question mark at the end. So we're generating num1 and num2 as a couple of numbers, then we're printing what is num1, num2, and it should be asking it as a question. I've just noticed I've got an extra parentheses there, so I'll get rid of that. And if we run the module, what is 1 times 1? Gosh, that wasn't very random, or it didn't look like it was very random. Let's just run the module again. 5 times 3, there you go, something different this time. So that's good. It seems to be working. Now, clearly, if I wanted to ask 10 questions, I could just copy this 10 times. But we're all into programming, and we know we wouldn't really do that. There must be some way to put this in a loop. So obviously within Scratch, we put it in some form of kind of for loop or repeat loop to go around so many times, and we could do that. So within Python, there is a way to do this, and it's using what we call a for loop. So what's the syntax of a for loop? Well, funny enough, it starts with the command for. You can see it's gone in orange. And then what we do is we create a variable, and it's what's called the loop variable. Now, in our case, we're asking lots of different questions. So I suppose our loop variable could be called question num, or index, because it's indexing through all the questions. You'll see what index does in a moment. So we say for, and we create a variable, and then we say in, and then what we've got to put after this is all the values that we want our for loop to go through. So if I want it to go through 10 times, I've got to put the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in here, which is a bit of a pain because it's something we do very often. So fortunately what we have is a range command, and basically the range command will generate me the numbers 1 through 10. Oh, apart from I need to spell range right. So that's the syntax of my for loop. For some variable in range 1 to 10. So the range 1 to 10 means all the numbers between 1 and 10. So we'll go around this loop, and index will take on the value of each of these numbers in the range all the way up to 10. Now the syntax of a for loop is we want a series of statements to be repeated as part of the loop. So whenever we have a series of statements that form a block or something that operates as a result of a line above, we always use a colon, and you'll see this comes in other places as well, but we always have a colon there. And watch what happens now as I hit return in the editor. You'll notice now the cursor automatically indents. If it's set up correctly, it should indent 4 spaces. It doesn't actually matter how many spaces, as long as it's consistent within your program. And if we're using 4, we always use 4. So that tells me the next line, that num line, really ought to be where my cursor is. So I can just backspace that. It's actually 1 tab stop in, so I can tab all those in as well. So what does this do now? The colon is the end of the for statement, and it tells me that the next line is to be operated on each time we go around this for loop. And because these are all indented, the same indent, they all form part of the same block. So you'll see other languages, if you're familiar with things like Java, is they might use this syntax and put a open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket there, because that's the way that we block these 3 commands together. In Python we don't use brackets. Indentation is all we use to indicate that these belong to the same block. So that means now it should go round this, generate the 2 numbers and ask the question. It will get to the end here. It will realize there are no more statements indented. It's actually the end of the program, but we are in the block still. So it goes back up now, and index will take a range 2. So maybe what we want to do in here is actually print the question number, and that's what we're going to use the index for in our case. So question number, and we're put a space in there. I don't need a space, do I? Index. Okay, so it should bring question number index, whatever value index takes. It should generate a couple of random numbers, and it should then ask us the question. So let's run that and see what happens. Whoa, there we go. Bit more maths. Question number 1, 7 sixes. Question number 2, 2 9s. 3 7 1s, etc, etc, etc. And oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Question number 9 was the last question, 3 times 4, and it ended. So it's only asked us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's only asked us 9 questions. Okay, but you can see the numbers look pretty random. So apart from the loop not working as we expected, at least the random numbers have been generated. So we need to go back and have a look at the loop and figure out what's gone on here. Well, there's no easy way to do it. I just need to explain it to you. This is correct. The value of index takes on the values all the way from 1 up to 10. However, when the value of index gets to 10, the loop ends. So it starts off being a value of 1. It goes all the way through here with a value of 1. It ends. It comes back to the top and now becomes 2. it's not got to the end yet. Fine. And it carries on like that. So you can see what's happening. It gets up to 8, it comes back up here and it's now the value 9. It prints question number 9. It runs through here and it's 9 at the end. It comes back up to the top. It now goes to the next number and it gets to 10 and it goes, great, I've got to the end, and it exits out of the loop. So it doesn't run through here with this last value in. Is that peculiar to Python? No. All programming languages do this. Just get used to it. You don't ever get to the last number of your for loop. So if we want to get to 10, we've actually got to put 11 in there. It feels a bit weird this at the moment. You're going from 1 to 11 to actually use 1 to 10. But when we start looking at indexing strings and things like that and lists, it really does make a lot of sense, and it's obvious why we do it this way. So for now, just bear with it. So we asked the question, but we didn't really give people the opportunity to test their answer. Now, we're not going to actually test whether people get it correct at this stage because we haven't looked at conditional statements. So what we're going to do is, after we've asked the question, we're going to put a statement saying print just hit any key to see the answer. And what we want the computer to do is now to wait until somebody presses a key. So how do we do that? Well, just use the input function. And we can now, after having done that, we can print what the answer was. So the answer was, I'm going to calculate it on the fly here, num1 times num2. So I'm not actually storing the answer anywhere. I'm calculating it here in this statement, num1 times num2, and that's becoming an argument to the print statement, so it gets printed out. So I'm not actually storing it anywhere. What's going on with this input statement? Well, it's prompting the user for input. This will sit there until somebody hits return. So we said press any key to see the answer. We should, if we want, if you press any key, it will sit taking keys. So maybe that's not right. Please hit enter, or the enter key to see the answer. And that'll terminate the input. It'll come back and then come on and show us the actual answer. So let's run that, see what's happening. Okay, what's 5 times 4? I think it's 20. Hit the enter key. The answer was 20. Yay! Number 2, what's 8 times 10? I think it's 80. Hit the enter key, and it was 80. Oh gosh, our spacing's not very good here, is it? It's kind of all over the place. Obviously, the input is sitting here on this line, so it's entering that. After we print the answer, we could do with some more spaces before we hit question 2, really. And do we really need this on its own line? I don't know. Well, you could mess around with the layout endlessly. But certainly one thing we want to do is, after we've printed the answer, we probably need a couple of blank lines to print. So the way we print blank lines is with what's called an escape character. Now the escape character is the other slash that we've not used yet. It's a backslash n. So I've done the same thing twice there, backslash n. So backslash is an escape character. It's called an escape character because it's part of a print sequence, so you think it would print that, but it doesn't. The backslash means, hang on a minute, there's a special character coming which has got special meaning. And this character n after a backslash means new line. So this should print a couple of new lines. You may not have actually thought about it, but if you think what the print statement does, is at the end of the print statement, it's actually been doing new lines as for us automatically, because these have all been appearing on new lines. So that's just the way it is. Can I get rid of that input line? Yes, I can. If I just change this to input instead of print, then our cursor will appear at the end of the line now, and I won't get another blank line in my script. So let's run that, see if it works. So a bit more maths. What's 3 times 6? Just hit the enter key to see the answer. You can see the cursor's now here because of the way we've used it. So I think it's 12. Oh, blimey, it was 18. I got that one wrong. And you can see there's a return character here at the end of the 18. That gives me one line, and I've then printed a further 2 blank lines before I go on to question 2. So okay, it's not checking what the answer is, but at least it's giving you a chance to think about it, and then it's showing you the right answer. Okay, so quite a lot in that one there. We've introduced 2 new concepts. We've introduced the concept of random integers. We've discovered that that wasn't a standard function in Python. We've had to import it, bring it in from a library or a module called random. We've imported this particular one, Randint. You might want to go and have a look what other functions are available in random and import those and have a play with them. And we've introduced the concept of this for loop here, where we've put a colon and all the text that's indented then becomes part of the loop. Just to show you that, finally, I'm going to print it's all over at the end. Now you'll notice that that is not indented, so that's not part of the loop, which means all this happens, and when it finally falls out the loop, it should print it's all over. I'm not going through 11 questions again because I'm sure you're all bored with it already. We'll just do a couple. So it should only run for 1 and 2 now. So 2 times 1 is 2. Yeah, got that wrong. 10 8s are 80. And it finished, and you can see it prints it's all over. It only printed that once. Why? Because it was not part of the indented block, so it's not part of the loop. I did the loop as many times as I told it to, in this case only 2. When the loop finished, it dropped out and it continued with the code down there. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Good luck, have fun playing with it. Try some ideas, mess around with it, change it to your own code, and make sure you understand it.